Some heroes don't wear medals. They wear scars, silence, and the weight of choices no one will ever understand. Claire Morgan stood when others fled, spoke when others were silenced, and healed where the system turned its back. Her fight was never about glory. It was about justice for the forgotten, dignity for the voiceless, and light for the ghosts we pretend not to see. "Wait, this is a misunderstanding," she cried, her voice desperate. "I didn't mean to—" The officer stepped forward, producing a pair of handcuffs. "Ma'am, you're under arrest for assault," the officer said. "Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." Lauren's breathing quickened as she realized there was no way out. Her gaze flicked to Nathan, who stood calm and composed, his presence a stark contrast to her unraveling demeanor. Trouble had arrived, and Lauren knew she couldn't escape it. This was only the beginning of her reckoning. Passengers watched, in stunned silence as Lauren's hands were cuffed behind her back. Tears streamed down her face as she tried to protest. "Please, Mr. Williams, I'm sorry," she sobbed. Nathan's expression remained impassive. "Your apology means nothing without accountability," he said quietly. "You made your choices. Now you'll face the consequences." The passengers watched silently, their eyes fixed on Lauren as she disappeared down the aisle, the once dominant flight attendant now a defeated figure, her arrogance replaced by regret and humiliation. Nathan turned back to the cabin, his voice steady as he addressed the passengers. "To everyone here, I apologize for what you had to witness today. This is not the standard of service I expect on my planes. Moving forward, we will ensure that every passenger is treated with the dignity and respect they deserve." The cabin erupted into applause, passengers clapping enthusiastically. Mr. Raymond gave a small cheer, while Mrs. Raymond set her knitting aside to clap politely. Nathan turned to Grace, the younger flight attendant who had quietly supported him throughout the ordeal. "Grace," Nathan said, his tone softening, "I noticed your professionalism today. Thank you for stepping up when it mattered. You'll be hearing from my office about a promotion." Grace's eyes widened, and she nodded quickly, her face lighting up with gratitude. "Thank you, Mr. Williams," she said softly. Nathan smiled, briefly before stepping toward the exit, his assistants following closely behind. The plane's atmosphere had shifted completely, the earlier tension replaced by admiration and relief. Justice had been served, and Nathan had set an example that no one on that flight would forget. Do you think Lauren deserves forgiveness? Or should she face the consequences of her actions? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Passengers smiled at the interaction, the warmth of the moment spreading through the cabin. The nosy socialite, who had watched the entire ordeal with wide-eyed fascination, leaned forward in her seat. "Mr. Williams, you're amazing!" she blurted out, her admiration shining brightly. Nathan turned toward her, a gentle smile gracing his lips. "Thank you," he replied. "Remember this moment. It's always worth standing up for what's right." As Nathan stepped off the plane, the fresh air of the tarmac greeted him. The black SUV waited patiently, its driver holding the door open. His assistants walked beside him, briefing him on his next meeting, but Nathan's thoughts lingered on the events of the day. Later, in a televised interview, Nathan sat in a sleek studio, his demeanor as poised as ever. The interviewer leaned forward, clearly captivated. "Mr. Williams, your story has gone viral. Millions of people have seen how you handled this situation. What message do you want to send?" Nathan's gaze was steady as he answered, his voice clear and resolute. "Respect is a right, not a privilege," he said. "Everyone deserves dignity, no matter how they look, where they come from, or what others assume about them. True leadership is about setting that standard and ensuring it's upheld." The interviewer nodded, visibly moved. "And what would you say to those who face similar challenges but don't have the platform you do?" Nathan's expression softened. "I'd say that strength comes from within. Even when you feel invisible, remember your worth. You don't need a title or wealth to demand respect. You just need to stand firm in who you are. A few weeks later, Nathan boarded another flight, this time greeted by a different crew. The energy was warm, welcoming, and professional. The lead flight attendant greeted him with a genuine smile. "Welcome aboard, Mr. Williams. It's an honor to have you." Nathan returned the smile as he settled into his seat. The atmosphere felt lighter, the service impeccable, but more importantly, it was filled with respect. As he gazed out the window, watching the runway blur into the sky, a sense of peace washed over him. The events of that day had left a lasting impact, not just on the passengers and crew who had witnessed it, but on everyone who had seen the story unfold. Nathan knew that his actions had turned an injustice into a lesson, one that would ripple far beyond that single flight. He smiled, knowing that sometimes the most powerful victories weren't about winning, they were about inspiring change. As the passengers settled into their seats, Nathan quietly reached for his phone. In the aftermath of what had unfolded, he knew this wasn't just about him. It was about changing a system that allowed prejudice and assumptions to thrive. As the jet climbed higher into the clouds, Nathan settled into his seat at the front of the plane. The window beside him framed a breathtaking view of the horizon, the world below fading into a sea of blue and white. He gazed out at the endless sky, a sense of peace washing over him. This wasn't just about confronting prejudice or asserting his authority. It was about turning a moment of humiliation into a powerful lesson, one that would ripple far beyond this single flight. Nathan smiled to himself, his reflection faintly visible in the window. He knew this was just the beginning. With every decision, every policy, and every act of leadership, he was shaping a future where respect and kindness were the standard, not the exception. The plane soared higher, the engines humming softly as it moved toward its destination, and Nathan, seated at the helm of his vision, felt a quiet triumph that no turbulence could ever shake. In a public statement released shortly after the flight, Nathan spoke directly to the world, his words carrying a message that resonated far beyond the confines of the jet. "Luxury isn't about appearances," he said in a heartfelt video that quickly went viral. "It's about the experience we create for everyone. True success is measured not by what you can afford, but by how you treat others. This is why I'm implementing new policies across my airline to ensure that every passenger, no matter who they are, feels valued and respected." The statement sparked conversations across social media, with people applauding Nathan's leadership and his commitment to change. Hashtags like "Respect Above All" and "By Nathan's Vision" trended for days, inspiring others to reflect on their own behavior and biases. If you love this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, and share with people around you. The fluorescent lights of Riverside General flickered overhead, casting a sterile glow on a hospital lobby that had long since stopped feeling like a place of healing. The chairs were plastic, gray, and lined against the walls like weary soldiers. A muted TV played a loop of hospital-approved programming. Behind the front desk, a young receptionist stared at her monitor, chewing gum slowly, one earbud tucked in discreetly. The waiting room buzzed with quiet suffering, coughs, pacing footsteps, tapping fingers, and the occasional echo of a child's whimper. Claire Morgan stood at her usual post, clipboard in hand, her scrubs pressed, her hair tied back in a no-nonsense bun. She was 36, with the posture of a woman who had seen too many emergencies to flinch and too many policy failures to hope. 11 years in this hospital, and still she addressed every patient as sir or ma'am, no matter their shoes, their smell, their stories. That Wednesday afternoon began like so many others. Shift turnover, a code blue in pediatrics, a new intern panicking over a routine IV. Then the front doors opened, and a man limped in. At first, no one looked up. His steps were slow, deliberate. His boots scuffed, his jeans torn. He smelled like sun and asphalt. A canvas jacket hung loosely on his narrow shoulders. The name stitched into the fabric had long faded, but the dog tag on his keychain was unmistakable. U.S. Army. His face was lined, weather-beaten. A streak of gray cut through his beard. The man looked like he had spent decades outside and maybe a few years forgotten. He didn't speak at first, just walked up to the desk swaying slightly on one leg. Blood soaked through the side of his jeans. The receptionist blinked, unimpressed. ID? He handed over a worn military-issued card. Walter Briggs. She tapped keys, frowned. You're not in our system. Claire, walking past, paused. She saw the leg before the name, a long gash across his calf, angry, red, clearly infected. She knelt quickly, gently pulling back the cloth. The smell hit her. Puss, heat, neglect, no insurance, the receptionist muttered. Claire looked up. That doesn't mean he doesn't need help. The charge nurse, Marla, appeared like a shadow. Claire, she warned under her breath. We can't admit him. Not in the system. Claire didn't flinch. Then I'll treat him off the system. Claire, I'll take responsibility. Without another word, Claire grabbed a med kit from the wall. She guided Briggs gently to a chair in the corner, away from the cameras. She opened the kit with muscle memory and precision. Gloves, gauze, alcohol, antibiotics. Each item chosen with a nurse's instinct, not a policy chart. Walter winced. Ma'am, I don't want to be a burden. She glanced up, eyes soft but resolute. You fought for this country. Let someone fight. For you now. His eyes stayed dry, but his voice cracked. Haven't heard that in a long time. Claire smiled gently and tore open a saline packet. Well, it's overdue. She cleaned the wound, applied topical antibiotics, bandaged it tightly, and handed him a granola bar from her lunch bag. He accepted it like a soldier receiving orders. Grateful, hesitant, overwhelmed. You didn't see me, she whispered as she packed up. But you're not walking out of here limping, and he didn't. He stood slowly, tested his weight, nodded to her with the unspoken dignity of a man who had survived deserts, bullets, and bureaucracy. Thank you, ma'am, he said quietly. Claire simply nodded back. Be safe, Walter. The Ray. Next morning, her name was called over the intercom. Administrative summons. She knew they didn't need to tell her twice. The walk to the third floor felt like a funeral march. The hallway colder than usual, sterile like the decisions that would be made inside. The director didn't offer her a seat. You administered treatment without authorization. Unauthorized medication. No admission. No chart. Claire folded her hands. I helped a man who served this country. You violated policy. You left a veteran bleeding in the lobby. He didn't respond, just handed her a manila envelope. You're suspended pending review. No hearing, no questions, no support. Just judgment in a hallway painted in neutral tones. The kind meant to soothe, but only served to numb. Claire packed her locker in silence, folded her scrubs, her stethoscope, her notes. 10 years, gone in one unsigned document. Outside, the sun was too bright, the sky too blue for what had just happened. She sat in her car, hands on the steering wheel, staring straight ahead. I'd do it again, she whispered, and in her mind she heard him. Thank you, ma'am. The streets looked the same, but something had changed. Something deep, something sacred. At her kitchen table, she set her nursing textbooks in a neat stack. She poured a cup of tea and didn't drink it. By nightfall, the silence felt unbearable. And then, the internet did what the hospital refused. Someone posted a photo. Nurse suspended for helping a veteran. Welcome to 2025. The story spread, like wildfire. The post went viral in hours. Comment after comment poured in. Policy over people. This is why we lose good ones. My father served and was treated like trash when he came back. God bless that nurse. She's a hero, period. If this is true, that hospital should be ashamed. My brother came home from Afghanistan with PTSD and no help. Thank God for nurses like her. Fire the administrator instead. Claire's phone buzzed relentlessly. Friends, strangers, co-workers, veterans. One message stood out. He told me what you did. You don't know me, but I know him. I'm coming. No name, no number, just that. Inside the hospital, administrator. Richard Hale wasn't panicking. Yet, this is about structure, not emotion, he told the board the next morning. She broke rules. We can't reward that. But something had shifted. The nurses were different. They spoke more quietly. They paused near the staff room, whispering. One wore a mini flag pin on her uniform. Another taped a note to the vending machine. Compassion is not a policy violation. Morale slipped through Hale's fingers like sand. That's when the elevator dinged. It was 10:14 a.m. A man stepped into the lobby. His uniform was pressed. His medals gleamed. 4 silver stars on his shoulder. The air changed. Time slowed. The security guard rose. Can I help you, sir? I'm looking for Nurse Claire Morgan. The receptionist stared. Hale rushed down. The stairs, tie askew, lips tight. General, may I ask what this is regarding? The man didn't blink. I'm here to speak on record. Phones came out. The moment was live before anyone could contain it. I'm General Thomas Avery, he said loudly, clearly. And I served with the man your nurse helped. Hale froze. A shiver ran through the room. Walter Briggs saved my life in Kandahar, twice. A ripple went through the staff watching. Eyes widened. A nurse gasped. He didn't ask for attention. He didn't ask for forms. He just needed help. And your nurse gave it to him. Silence. When I was bleeding out behind a burning truck, Walter didn't wait for my insurance. He ran. Through gunfire, no helmet, no body armor, just loyalty. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a sealed letter. This one is for the Secretary of Veterans Affairs. Then a smaller envelope. This one is for Claire Morgan. Hale stammered. General, this is highly irregular. So is punishing compassion, the general replied. He turned. Where is she? A nurse whispered. Outside, sir. Sitting on the curb. Avery didn't hesitate. He marched through the ER doors. Claire looked up as Boots stopped before her. I'm General Avery, he said, voice gentler now. Permission to thank you properly. I'm not military, she said, rising slowly. No, he said, but you remembered what we fight for. He handed her the envelope. Inside, an invitation to speak at the National Medical Ethics Summit. And a job offer from the VA, Regional Emergency Response Liaison. Reporters swarmed, but Claire just stared at the ER entrance. Will they change? She asked. The general nodded. Only if someone like you walks back in. Claire didn't say yes. Not right away. She returned home that night with the envelope still unopened on her kitchen counter. The offer from the VA, a new job, a new role, a new system. She stared at it like it was radioactive. Outside, a storm. Rolled in. Wind whispered through the trees. Her tea, again, went cold. She thought about the hospital hallway. The administrator's tight voice. The eyes of her fellow nurses. The gash in Walter's leg. The moment she'd knelt down, knowing it would cost her, and doing it anyway. By morning, a letter had been slipped under her door. No return address. Inside, a piece of paper, handwritten. You didn't just treat a wound. You reminded a man he still mattered. That matters more than policy ever will. W. Walter. She folded it once, slid it into her wallet next to her nursing license. The phone rang an hour later. Miss Morgan? A clipped voice. Female. Federal. "This is Agent Rowe with the Office of the Inspector General. May we speak?" Claire stiffened. "About?" "There's a pattern we're investigating at Riverside General." "You've been named." Claire's stomach dropped. "Named for what?" "I'm suspended." "Exactly," Rowe said. "You're not the only one." Claire met the agent in a downtown federal building. The hallways were narrow, the walls colorless, but the conversation was anything but sterile. "We believe your hospital has been systematically turning away high-need, low-income patients," Rowe explained. "Veterans, elderly, immigrants, those unlikely to pay." Claire blinked. "That's illegal and immoral," the agent agreed, "but difficult to prove. Until now." She slid a folder across the table. Inside, photos. Walter, her. A time-stamped hospital surveillance shot of Claire crouched with the med kit. Another. A list of patients who had shown up in the ER but had no charts. And another, staff emails. "Someone's been leaking," Claire said. Rowe nodded. "A nurse. You inspired her." Claire looked at the envelope again. "I want to help." "You already did," Rowe said. "Now we'll finish it." Meanwhile, the hospital was unraveling. The board held a confidential meeting that leaked within hours. Protesters gathered outside, veterans in uniform, nurses in scrubs, teenagers holding signs that read, "Compassion First." News vans lined the parking lot. Local anchors stood in front of the building, reporting, "Claire Morgan, the nurse, who was suspended for helping a veteran, may have uncovered something deeper. Federal investigations underway. What began as a quiet act of mercy has ignited a movement." Inside the ER, morale shattered. 3 nurses resigned. 2 doctors demanded a review of policy. And Administrator Hale? He paced. His office, curtains drawn, blinds shut, doors locked. He received one anonymous voicemail. "He saved my life. You nearly cost it. You should resign." He didn't sleep that night, but Claire did. For the first time in weeks, she slept 8 uninterrupted hours. The next morning, the VA flew her to D.C. She stood before a conference room packed with lawmakers, healthcare administrators, and military officials. Her hands didn't tremble as she stepped up to the microphone. "I'm not here to make speeches," she began. "I'm here to tell the truth." She told them about Walter, about the wound, the smell of infection, the silence of the desk clerk, the coldness of the policy. She paused. "I was told compassion violated policy. But what happens when policy violates humanity?" The room went still. "I didn't act as a rogue nurse. I acted as a decent human being. If that's punishable, maybe the rules need to change." Thunderous applause followed. One congresswoman stood and offered her hand. "Miss Morgan, I believe you just sparked a revolution." Claire blinked. "I just treated a man who was bleeding." "That," the congresswoman said, "is exactly what this country needs more of." Back home, the hospital board caved. The administrator was asked to resign. Quietly, with a severance that made Claire's stomach turn, but he was gone. And Claire? She didn't go back. Not to that building. Instead, she took the VA position, but insisted it remain field-based. She traveled to clinics across the country, training triage nurses, rewriting emergency protocols, telling her story in small, gritty rooms with cracked linoleum floors. In Milwaukee, she treated a man whose frost-bitten fingers were black. In Houston, she caught a diabetic coma before it claimed a child. In Reno, she sat on the sidewalk beside a vet who hadn't spoken in 3 years, until she called him sir and handed him a sandwich. And then one day, a call. It was Walter. His voice was stronger now. "I found something," he said. "Or rather, someone." Claire leaned forward. "I'm listening." He told her about a girl, his granddaughter, 10 years old, living in foster care after her mother died. The system had missed her, just like it had missed him. But he was back on his feet now, literally, working part-time at a mechanic's shop, trying to get custody. "I need a reference," he said, embarrassed. "You know, someone who doesn't think I'm just a ghost." Claire smiled, even though he couldn't see it. "You're not a ghost, Walter. You're a reminder." She wrote him a letter that made the court stop the hearing for a moment. "Who wrote this?" the judge asked. "Someone who remembered I existed," Walter said. He got custody, sent Claire a photo 2 weeks later. Him in a small backyard, sitting beside a grinning 10-year-old with a chocolate-stained mouth. "We're okay now," he'd scribbled on the back. "Because of you." Claire was in St. Louis when she got the letter. Not an email, not a call, a letter. Handwritten. The envelope carried no return address, but the handwriting was painfully familiar. She hadn't seen it in over 15 years. She sat on the edge of the motel bed, heart drumming, tea cooling on the nightstand. Inside was a single page. "Claire, I saw you on the news. I wasn't surprised. You always had that fire in you. I know I don't deserve a response, not after the way I left. But I need your help. Your father is dying. I wouldn't ask if it weren't urgent, please. Come home." Mom Claire sat frozen, her breath caught in her throat. Home. That word hadn't meant anything in years. Her mother had vanished after a brutal fight during Claire's last year of nursing school. Her father. The silence had lasted even longer. A lump formed in her throat. She read the letter again. Then she packed a bag and booked a ticket to Idaho. The house was smaller than she remembered, worn shutters, a tired roof. Wind chimes hung from the porch, barely moving. Claire stood outside for a full minute before knocking. She half expected no one to answer. But then the door opened. Her mother stood there, thinner, her once dark hair now streaked with gray. Her eyes widened. "Claire?" Claire didn't smile. "Where is he?" Her mother stepped aside. Inside, the air smelled faintly of antiseptic and old newspapers. The living room had been converted into a hospice space. An oxygen tank hummed softly in the corner. And in the hospital bed, pale and smaller than she remembered, was her father, John Morgan. A man of stone. A military man who'd believed in obedience, not affection. Who'd once told her compassion was weakness. Who hadn't spoken to her since she left for nursing school instead of enlisting. He stirred. Opened his eyes. They locked eyes for the first time in 18 years. He tried to speak, but the words got caught in his throat. "I'm here," Claire said, not warmly, but not coldly either. Her mother closed the door gently behind her and left them alone. A long silence followed. Then, her father whispered, "You became the better soldier." Claire's breath caught. He turned his head slightly. "I watched what you did. That man, Walter. You saved him when no one else would." Claire swallowed. "I'm not here for your approval." "I know," he rasped. "But you should have had it." She sat down, tears threatening but not falling. Her father continued in gasps and stops. "I was wrong about what strength looks like. I see that now." A pause. "I'm sorry." Claire looked away. Her jaw tightened. But then she looked back. "Why now?" she asked. "Why wait until the end?" He coughed. "Because endings are honest. We run out of pride right before we run out of time." She stayed the night, not out of forgiveness, but because he needed someone who wouldn't flinch at the sight of a feeding tube or when the morphine pump beeped, and because, despite it, All she still believed in dignity, even for him. He passed 2 days later. Not peacefully, but not violently either, just quietly. Like an apology. Claire handled the paperwork, arranged the modest funeral. There were only a few attendees. Some. Neighbors, an old army friend, no folded flag, no gun salute. Just a plain pine box and the wind rustling in the trees. Afterward, her mother poured coffee at the kitchen table. She looked older now, yes, but also lighter somehow, less guarded. He watched every clip, her mother said softly. Printed every article about you. He just didn't know how to tell you. Claire shook her head. It doesn't matter. It does, her mother insisted. You're carrying it, like armor, but you don't have to anymore. They sat, in silence. Then her mother reached under the table, pulled out a thin folder. He left this for you. Claire opened it. Inside, an old newspaper article nearly 2 decades old. A story about a fire in a nursing home. One nurse had stayed behind, refusing to leave until every resident was out. Her name wasn't in the headline, but it was in the final paragraph. Lead nurse Margaret Whitfield remained inside until the final patient was pulled from room 12. She was treated for smoke inhalation at the scene. All 32 residents survived. Claire blinked. Margaret Whitfield. Her mother's maiden name. You were a nurse? She whispered. Her mother nodded slowly. Until that night. I never went back. Claire stared. Why didn't you tell me? I didn't want you to carry my pain or my mistakes, but you found your way anyway. It hit her like a punch, the truth behind her mother's silence, the shadows in her eyes every time nursing came up. The way she had fled, not because she was heartless, but because she'd once risked everything too. Claire closed the folder and reached for her mother's hand. You should tell your story, she said. Her mother smiled. I don't need to. You're already living it. Back on the road, Claire felt different, lighter, not healed, but less broken. She started writing. Not for the public, for herself, for the little girl she used to be who thought compassion was a weakness, for the soldier she once resented, and the nurse who carried invisible scars. Her journal became letters. Letters became speeches. And one of those speeches, delivered at a medical ethics conference in Baltimore, caught the attention of a documentary filmmaker. Claire said no at first, but then she got a call. It was from a small rural hospital in Montana. Miss Morgan? The nurse said. We have a veteran here, no ID, won't speak, but he had one thing in his pocket, a note. She faxed it over. Claire read the smudged handwriting. If you don't help me, call Claire Morgan. She will. The veteran's name was Leon Bates, 82, Army Ranger, no known family. Found unconscious behind a diner near the Montana border. Hypothermic, malnourished, multiple untreated injuries. Claire arrived within 6 hours. When she walked into the small-town hospital, the nurses stiffened. She was known now, both loved and loathed. Some still called her a rogue, others a reformer, but they all watched her like a warning sign with a heartbeat. She entered room 3. Leon was awake, pale, alert but silent. She pulled up a chair. You asked for me. He studied her face. Saw what you did. Thought maybe you'd understand. Understand what? He motioned toward his bag. She opened it. Inside, military patches, a Medal of Honor, and a black notebook, thick, with aging pages. She flipped it open. Dozens of names, dates, locations. At first, she thought it was a journal. But then she saw it. Operation Gideon. Redacted names. No civilian entry. It wasn't a diary. It was a log. Claire sat back, stunned. You documented Black Ops missions, she whispered. Leon's eyes hardened. We were ghosts, Denied, buried, I wanted someone to remember. She kept flipping pages. The farther she read, the more horrific the entries became. But then she found something that made her blood run cold. Walter Briggs, Operation Thorn, asset extraction. She froze. Walter, the man whose case had ignited her downfall, was in this log. But according to the entry, he wasn't just a veteran. He was a government asset, rescued, embedded, silenced. Claire looked up. "This is dangerous," she said quietly. Leon nodded. "I'm dying. I needed someone with the guts to do the right thing, even if it means everything burns." She exhaled slowly. "I'm not a whistleblower." "No," Leon said, "but you're not a coward either." That night she couldn't sleep. She sat in the motel staring at the notebook. The stories inside weren't just painful, they were damning. If she went public, the fallout would be nuclear. Names would fall. Her career, whatever remained of it, would be over. She could be arrested. But if she stayed silent, those men stayed forgotten. She picked up the phone. Not to the press, to Walter Briggs. He answered after 4 rings. "You're not supposed to have this number," he said. "I know," Claire replied. "But I have something. From Montana. From a man who remembers you." Silence. Then, "Where?" "Small town. Near Helena. His name's Leon. He's dying." Another long pause. Then Walter said, "You need to leave. Now. That logbook, I know what it is." "Claire, people disappear for less." "I've already disappeared once," she whispered. 2 days later, Leon Bates was dead. Officially, heart failure. But Claire knew the difference between death and cleanup. The logbook vanished from her motel room. The hospital cameras were mysteriously wiped, but Claire had already scanned every page and uploaded them. Not to the press, to 10 nurses across the country, ones she trusted, ones who believed in what she did. Then she waited. A month passed. Claire returned to work, this time as a volunteer at a mobile clinic in Detroit. No pay, no title, just service. One rainy afternoon, while wrapping a child's sprained wrist, she saw it on the clinic TV. Breaking. Secret military files leaked. Detailed logs of hidden veteran operations sparked national outrage. Walter's name was never mentioned, neither was hers, but the world now knew. Veterans who had vanished were spoken about again. Families who'd been told their loved ones disappeared in action finally got closure. And then something happened Claire never expected. She received a letter, hand-delivered, no envelope, just a folded sheet. Inside, one sentence. "Because of you, ghosts have names again. W." She smiled for the first time in weeks, but the twist came days later. A woman showed up at the clinic, early 40s, nervous, carrying a thick manila envelope. "Are you Claire Morgan?" she asked. "Yes." The woman held out the envelope. "This is from my father. He told me if anything ever happened to him, to find you." Claire took the envelope, heart pounding. The name on the back, Leon Bates. She opened it. Inside were 2 things. First, a single-page document titled Reinstatement Order, Claire Morgan, RN, signed Senator Harold Kessler. The second, a sealed letter with the Department of Defense insignia. Claire opened it slowly. "Miss Morgan, the AI logbook you helped expose included several files that were never meant to see the light of day. Among them, one particular file led us to uncover a massive internal fraud operation involving falsified medical records, forged discharges, and the illegal denial of benefits to over 2,000 veterans. Your actions did not just challenge a system. They forced it to confront its reflection. We will never publicly honor what you've done, but the right people know. You are hereby offered a classified appointment to the Veterans Integrity Commission. If you decline, this letter self-destructs. If you accept, report to the address on the back at Oro 600. Either way, thank you. DOD. Internal Affairs. Claire stared at the paper. Her hands shook. She had gone from being suspended for saving one man to being offered the power to save thousands from the shadows. She folded the letter, looked out the clinic window, and whispered, "Let's finish what we started." Some heroes don't wear medals. They wear scars, silence, and the weight of choices no one will ever understand. Claire Morgan stood when others fled, spoke when others were silenced, and healed where the system turned its back. Her fight was never about glory. It was about justice for the forgotten, dignity for the voiceless, and light for the ghosts we pretend not to see. Thank you for walking this journey with Claire through the shadows of sacrifice and into the fire of truth. If her story moved you, if it made you feel, question, or remember someone who served, then it's done what it was meant to do. For more stories that reveal the hidden courage in ordinary souls, subscribe and stay with us. The next story may change you even more.